When the COVID-19 pandemic was just getting started in early 2020, every major city, state health department, and federal agency involved built out data dashboards you could access online to check case counts and trends. Public health officials could constantly be heard asking everyone to flatten the curve, that curve being a graph of infection rates over time. But how do you get such a graph? By and large, our measure of the pandemic came through individual case counts, confirmed with laboratory testing and reported to a data clearinghouse like the local public health department or the CDC. There was a lot of confusion about testing, positivity rates, how that information applied to the greater population, and how it could be used to implement measures to slow the spread of disease. The limitations of individual testing data, including test shortages, reporting delays, and unequal access to healthcare, made public health decisions extremely challenging. I'm Grady, and this is Practical Engineering. In today's episode, we're talking about wastewater surveillance for public health. Wastewater flows in sewers, primarily via gravity, combining and concentrating as it continues to a treatment plant where a number of processes are used to rid it of concomitant contaminants so it can be reused or discharged back into the environment. In the early days of sewage treatment, sampling consisted only of measuring the basic contaminants, such as nutrients and suspended solids. But as our testing capabilities increased, it slowly became easier and less expensive to measure other impurities, sometimes known as contaminants of emerging concern. These included pharmaceuticals, pesticides, personal care products, and even illicit drugs. Take a sample of sludge from the bottom of a clarifier, send it off to a lab, and roughly characterize in hours or days the dietary habits, pharmaceutical use, and even cocaine consumption of a specific population of people. If you're a public health researcher or public official, that is a remarkable capability. To quote one of the research papers I read, wastewater is a treasure trove of biological and chemical information. Think about all the stuff that gets washed down the drain, but one particular wastewater constituent took center stage starting in early 2020. Of course, for decades, we've tracked pathogens in wastewater to make sure they aren't released into the environment in treatment plant effluent. But the COVID-19 pandemic created a vacuum of information on virus concentrations that had never been experienced before. We realized early in the pandemic that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is shed in the feces of most infected people. Even before widespread tests for the virus were available, many public health agencies were sampling the wastewater in their communities as a way to track the changes in infection rates over time. Realizing the importance of coordinating all these separate efforts, many countries created national tracking systems to standardize the collection and reporting of virus concentrations in sewage. In the US, the CDC launched the National Wastewater Surveillance System in September of 2020. Wastewater surveillance is a great tool to keep an eye out for a resurgence in COVID-19 infections, and it can even be used to monitor for new variants. Of course, wastewater surveillance has some limitations too, the biggest one being accuracy. The science is still relatively new, and there are lots of confounding variables to keep in mind. In addition to changes in dilution from other wastewater flows and sewer shed population mentioned before, the quantity of viruses shed varies significantly between individuals and even over the course of any one infection. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think.